The ability to knock an opponent out with a single punch is a skill all fighters aspire to. That single, forceful blow that will instantaneously end a bout is something all combat sports fans crave. But what really goes on inside a fighter's head when they are on the receiving end of one of those knockout punches? And what are the potential ramifications? The science of the knockout. When a person is hit with a large amount of force to their head, it causes the head and neck to jolt in the direction that force is pushing it. This force then impacts on the movement of the brain. Our brains sit inside the skull, floating in cerebral fluid designed to protect it from trauma. When a fighter is hit hard, the sudden movement shocks the brain, which does not have time to adjust to the rapid acceleration and deceleration of the skull. This in turn causes the brain to move around in the cerebral fluid, colliding with the inside of the skull and causing trauma to the soft tissue of the brain. The fighter's brain, dependent upon the force delivered, will then usually bounce back in the opposite direction and suffer further impact as a result of striking the surface of the skull. Imagine it like a Kinder Surprise egg, the toy capsule inside being your brain. When you shake the egg, you can feel the capsule bouncing back and forth inside the chocolate shell. That same concept applies to the movement of a fighter's brain after they receive a knockout blow. As a result of the overwhelming stimulation the brain tissue is receiving, the body sends out a series of neurotransmitters and excessive blood supply to the brain in an attempt to repair the damage. According to neurologist and boxing physician Anthony Alessi, when blood supply to the brain is not sufficient to repair the level of damage, the fighter will lose consciousness. After a brain injury, the heart must supply sufficient blood flow for the brain to repair itself. If the demand outweighs the supply, the brain then shuts down and leads to an eventual loss of consciousness, Anthony Alessi, M.D. said. According to research conducted in 2014 by the American Association of Neurological Surgeons, the force of a professional boxer's punch is approximately the same as that of a 9 kg bowling ball traveling at 32 km per hour, and colliding with a person's head. Not surprisingly, studies show that around 90% of professional boxers will endure some form of brain injury throughout the course of their career, while numerous researchers have found that between 15 to 40% of boxers showed signs of chronic brain injury. This culminated in approximately 488 boxing-related deaths in the period from 1960 to 2011, with 66% of these being attributed to head and neck trauma. The devastating effects. Despite a major development in concussion protocols and management in recent years, death in combat sports is still a very shocking reality. In 2014 alone, 3 professional boxers were killed by knockout punches they received during scheduled fights. Findil Mwiles of South Africa, Oscar Gonzalez of Mexico and Japanese fighter Tetshin Okada all passed away having never regained consciousness after being knocked out. Earlier this year, Australian professional boxer Braden Smith died after collapsing following a welterweight bout in Toowoomba, Queensland. The 23-year-old suffered severe swelling on the brain as a result of injuries suffered during the bout.